This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Say. Bruchim Abam to the Chronological Pirka, Parshas Chukas. We have the unfortunate opportunity that we have to hear about the passing of Aaron HaKohen in this week's Parsha. The Pasuk says in Parak Chav, Pasuk Chav Tes, Vayiru Kol Ha'eda. And the congregation saw Kigava Aaron, that Aaron had passed away. Vayivku as Aaron shloshim yom kol beis Yisrael. And the people cried for Aaron for 30 days, all of Klal Yisrael. Whereupon the pasuk says, Vayishma HaKnani melech Harod Yoshev HaNegev ki ba Yisrael derech ha'asarim. The Knani heard, those who lived in the south, that Klal Yisrael came through the path of the Asarim. Vayilachem b'Yisrael vayiz mimenu shevi. They took captives of Klal Yisrael. Now, very interesting that the Psukim juxtapose the death of Aaron to the attack of the Knanim. What's the connection between the Patira of Aaron HaKohen and the attack of the Knanim? So, the Daf Yomi just learned recently, Mesech Tainis and Daf Tes, the Gemara says like this. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, Shloisha Parnosim Tovim Amdu L'Yisrael. Klal Yisrael had three great leaders, three great providers. Who are they? Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. And through these great leaders, Klal Yisrael were given three great gifts. Be'elohein, Be'er, Va'anan Uman. The well of Miriam, the cloud, the Anani HaKavod, and the Man. The Be'er was in the schus of Miriam, the Amud was in the schus of Aaron, and the Man was in the schus of Moshe. Says the Gemara, when Miriam died, the Be'er went away. Why? How do I know? Because it says in this week's Parsha also, after Miriam, when did Miriam die? What day of the year? No? What day of the year? When did Miriam die? What? Very good. Actually, right, Yud Nisan, not Shabbos, right? Around that time, Yud Nisan. Miriam died Yud Nisan. And when Miriam died, the Be'er went away. Shenemar, Vatama Sha Miriam. What does it say afterwards? V'lohaya mayim la'eda. So now the problem is, after Miriam died, the Jews had no water to drink, so what did they drink? Says the Gemara, V'chazra b'schus shneyen. It returned only in the zechus of Moshe and Aaron. So Meis Aaron, when Aaron died, Nistalku Anani HaKavod. The Anani HaKavod left. Shenemar, it says also in this week's Parsha, what we just read, by Yishma HaKnani Melech Harod. What did they hear? It says they heard and they attacked. What did they hear? Mashmua Shama. Shama Shemeis Aaron. They heard Aaron died. V'nistalku Anani HaKavod. Because Savar Nitna Lo Rishus L'Lachem Yisrael must be, if God removed the Anani HaKavod, He must be giving license for us to attack Klal Yisrael. V'hainu d'chsiv, in the next pasuk, Vayiru Kol Ha'eda Ki Gava Aaron Amar Avo Al Tikri Vayiru Ela Vayirau. They were afraid. Right? It doesn't say Vayiru Kol Ha'eda. Don't read it. The nation saw that Aaron died, but rather Vayirau. They were afraid that Aaron died. Why were they afraid? Because now their bubble, right, their protective shell was removed. So, says the Gemara, the Amar Reish Lakish, Ki Meshamish Ba'arba L'Shainos. The word ki has four meanings. If. Dilma, maybe. Ella, but, that. Says the Gemara, Chazru Shneim B'schus Moshe. Again, the Anani HaKavod and the Be'er returned in the schus of Moshe Rabbeinu. But once Moshe died, Meis Moshe Nistalku Kulan. Okay. So it comes out that the Anani HaKavod were given to Klal Yisrael in the schus of Aaron HaKohen. What we'd like to try to explain a little bit was, what is the connection between Aaron HaKohen and the Anani HaKavod? What midah did Aaron have that because of it warranted that we were rewarded with Anani HaKavod? Okay. Now, very interesting. The pasuk says, "Vayishma HaKnani Melech Harod Yoshev HaNegev Ki ba Yisrael derech ha'asarim." How many times in the Chumash does the word ha'asarim appear? Right, you didn't know any times until now, right? Ha'asarim, one time. Ha'asarim. What does ha'asarim mean? I don't know. Very good. Very good. Rashi says two pshatim. Rashi either says the south, that Klal Yisrael were coming through the Negev the same way the Meraglim came in, or Rashi says derech hatayar hagadol, through the great scout. They were going the route of the great scout. Who's the great scout? The Arain. Says Rabbi Shulei Diskin, another kasha. Very interesting. How did the Canaanim hear that Aaron died? What, they got the yatet? The Canaanim got the yatet? How did the Canaanim know? Hamodia, they didn't have. Mishpacha, Ami, they didn't have all of this stuff. Right? What?
They're not mishpacha.
They're not, no. By the way, besides reading newspapers, all these papers, you also have to learn. I'm just telling you, big chiddush. That besides all these things that could occupy your lives 24 hours a day, there's no mitzvah to read them. If you want to subscribe, support Jews, no problem. But you also have the main mitzvah of Shabbos is not reading all these newspapers, is learning Torah. You know, it's a little bit of it's wonderful that we have all these periodicals. But you have to understand, the purpose of Shabbos is Talmud Torah. Anyway.
They have all the Torah.
Yeah, but you could get a real Torah also, right? Anyway, so it says in, Reb Shulei Diskin wants to know, how did the Canaanim hear that Aaron HaKohen passed away? How would they know? How would they know such a thing? So Rabbi Shulei Diskin says a very innovative shot in what it means, Ha'asarim. B'tzarech loimer ma'u pirish ha'asarim. What does asarim mean? So Rashi says a pshat, Onkelos says a pshat. Rabbeinu Zal Amar says the Reb Shulei Diskin. The word asarim comes from the Aramaic word asra. You ever hear that word asra? What does asra mean? A place. In other words, like this: until Aaron died, what did we have? Ananei HaKavod. Yeah. Once we had the Ananei HaKavod, we didn't have to go through inhabited land. We could traverse uninhabited land, desert, dangerous terrain, rocky terrain, mountainous regions, valleys, rivers. The Ananei HaKavod just went right through, swept right through, cleared the path, killed the dangerous snakes and scorpions and so forth. Until this point in time, there's no need for Klal Yisrael to travel through inhabited portions. But now that Aaron died, all of a sudden the Canaanim take note of the fact that now the Klal Yisrael, they're traveling through regular cities, regular villages. And they're wondering to themselves, what happened? Why all of a sudden are Klal Yisrael traveling through the inhabited cities? So they asked, and they found out that the Ananei HaKavod stopped, and they asked, why did the Ananei HaKavod stop? And they were told, because Aaron HaKohen passed away. So says Rabbi Shulei Diskin, this is the meaning. When the people saw Aaron die, they cried for 30 days. Vayishma HaKnani, the Knani heard. How did they hear? Ki ba Yisrael derech ha'asarim. Because they came through the derech ha'asarim, the inhabited portions. All of a sudden their trip took on a different, right, when they put in the GPS, they asked, do you want rocky terrain or unroad? Do you want to avoid the rocky terrain? So until now, Klal Yisrael punched in, no, we don't need to avoid the rocky terrain. And now all of a sudden their route took on a different form. Okay.
Did they travel during the 30 days?
No, we don't. Probably not. Okay.
I don't understand.
Somebody's GPS is not functioning.
No, how did they hear that Aaron died? When they saw the Jews stop traveling through the uninhabited terrain. No, now their routes were through regular villages. All of a sudden now they were only traveling through... Okay, fine.
The Midbar is uninhabited. They reached a point in their trip that is inhabited. I don't understand.
No, they were... In the Midbar, they were going in circles for 40 years.
Right.
And no, now they weren't. Now they weren't anymore. Now they were going derech ha'asarim. They were going through inhabited areas.
But they went to Yarden, not to Eretz Israel.
Yeah, but there are people other than in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, in the Zmiros of Shabbos, in Kol Mekadesh Shvi. Kol Mekadesh Shvi, we don't know exactly who wrote it, but we know it has very early origins. It's already reported by the Machzor Vitri, and in Mekadesh we say Hama'acharim Latseis Min HaShabbos Umemarin Lavai. It's praising those who delay Shabbos late and who hasten its coming. Tois v'Shabbos. Tois v'Shabbos. Question is, right? It's obviously out of order. Why would it first praise those who are Ma'acharim Latseis Min HaShabbos and only then praise the Memarin Lavai? First comes Memarin Lavai. First comes Tois v'Shabbos in the beginning, and then comes Tois v'Shabbos in the end. So I'm going to tell you a vart that appears in a certain sefer. I'm going to tell you why it's probably wrong, and I'm going to tell you the way it really went. Okay, you have over here number 6. It's this is a famous vart, but it's sometimes I think it's not reported correctly. Again, the famous question is Hama'achrim latzeis min hashabbos umemaharim lavai. It's out of order. Now, B'chlal, let's talk about the mitzvah of Tosfos Shabbos. What's the union of Tosfos Shabbos? So, there is a Medrash Rabbah that says like this, that a basar v'dam cannot be exact with their time. Nobody knows exactly when something starts or exactly when it ends. In our shul we have an atomic clock, it's 2.5 minutes late. Right? Even an atomic clock, it's usually off. It can't be exactly. Only the Ribbon Shalom knows Itav v'ragav k'charasara. Yeah? Only the Ribbon Shalom knows time precisely. So therefore, for the Ribbon Shalom, Shabbos starts exactly in the beginning of the 7th day. Right? Like the Pasuk says, Vayichulu Hashemayim, right? Vayishbos bayom hashvi. Well, for God rests immediately when the 7th day starts, but not a moment earlier. But for a human being, we have to have Tosfos Shabbos misafek. Misafek, you have to have Tosfos Shabbos. Now, not everybody agrees that's the reason for Tosfos Shabbos. The Ran in Masechta Bei on Daf Lamed writes that Tosfos Shabbos is aside from whatever time you have to keep Shabbos misafek. Because the Ran holds Safek D'Oraisa, L'chumra, Mid'Oraisa. And therefore, Tosfos Shabbos is outside of whatever you're masupik about. You need additional Tosfos Shabbos. But if you look in the Medrash Rabbah in Bereshis, that says, well, basar v'dam cannot possibly know when time begins and ends. Therefore, basar v'dam needs Tosfos Shabbos. That implies Tosfos Shabbos is only because of a suffix. We can't know exactly when Shabbos starts. That being the case, look at number 6. That we know that if Tosfos Shabbos is only to make sure you're not violating Shabbos because you can't know exactly when Shabbos starts. But when we had Ananei HaKavod, that the Amud Anan came exactly when the morning started, and the Amud Eish came exactly when the night started, there would be no need for Tosfos Shabbos, because that was a supernatural way to know the precise moment when Shabbos began and when Shabbos ended. As soon as Amud Eish came, we knew it was nightfall, and you have to keep Shabbos. As soon as the Amud Eish came, Matzoi Shabbos, we knew Shabbos was over. So long as the Ananei HaKavod existed, there would have been no need for Tosfos Shabbos. So it's brought down over here in the Sefer Iturei Torah. And when then did Klal Yisrael begin to keep Tosfos Shabbos? Well, when Aaron was alive, there was no need for Tosfos Shabbos because we knew exactly when Shabbos began and when Shabbos stopped. When did Aaron pass away? On Shabbos. He writes, even though he has found no source for this, there's no source anywhere that Aaron passed away on Shabbos. But he says, Aaron passed away on Shabbos, and therefore, the first time Klal Yisrael kept Tosfos Shabbos was the last day of Aaron's life, but they didn't put Tosfos Shabbos in the beginning of Shabbos, because then they had Ananei HaKavod at the beginning of Shabbos. So they were not Memaher and Lavai, but they were Ma'achar and Lotzeis. So therefore, the Zimra says, Ma'achar and Lotzeis min HaShabbos, the first time that Klal Yisrael kept Tosfos Shabbos, and Umar and Lavai, the second time. To me, this is a little difficult, because you're saying a whole pshat in a Zemer based on a theory that Aaron passed away on Shabbos, which there's no source for. We don't know that.
When did the Ananei HaKavod come back for Moshe?
I don't know. We'll see. Well, for Moshe, when? I don't know. So
there was a war in between, so it was at least one day.
So exactly. This vart is predicated on the fact that Aaron HaKohen passed away on Shabbos. I don't believe there's any source for such a thing, but I believe that the vart goes in the following way, and I found this in the Sefer Oyros HaShabbos, Rav Shlomo of Vorman, who lived in this neighborhood, Zechrona Livracha, and he brings down this vart from Rav Pinchas Karatzer. Rav Pinchas Karatzer, who he lived in between 1728 and 1791. He was a Talmud Chaver of the Baal Shem Tov, but a Goyin Olam, the Pinchas Karatzer. And I believe he said like this, and this is how Rabbi Warman reports it in his Sefer, like this. Aaron HaKohen did not pass away on Shabbos. But when Aaron HaKohen passed away, and the Ananei HaKavod left, guess what? They came back in the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on Shabbos, like we know that on Shabbos Mincha time, we say Tzidkascha, we're Majestic the din, because that's the time of the Patir of Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's well known Moshe died on Shabbos. The Gemara Menachos, Tosfos Menachos, Daf Lamed. So it comes out like this. When Aaron passed away and Ananiah Kavod left. It came back in the Schus of Moshe. When was the first time it left for good? When Moshe passed away. When did Moshe pass away? On Shabbos. So that explains Hama'achrim Lotzis Min HaShabbos Umemarin Lavai. I think that is the more correct way to say.
It's
The same, right? Just more accurate. Okay.
If we know Moshe died on Zayin Adar, we can't figure out when the Rosh Chodesh Av was.
If Moshe passed away on Rosh Chodesh Adar and Aaron Zayin Adar,
And Aaron died on Rosh Chodesh Av, can't we just make a calculation? One Shabbos?
no, how are you going to know how many days Rosh Chodesh each month was?
You don't really know about how many days.
No way to know.
You don't know really how many
No way to
days.
know.
Some Chodesh is Malay,
Maybe. Okay.
I like that explanation.
Okay, says Rabbeinu Chananel. Rabbeinu Chananel brought down in Rabbeinu Bechai in Parshas Boy, says a very interesting chiddush, and that is, in the ideal world, what's the ideal way to make the calendar? Al pi re'iyah or al pi cheshbon? Through witnesses or through calculation like we have today? I think if you would ask most people, they would say al pi re'iyah would certainly be more of an ideal way, more of the. And yet Rabbeinu Chananel says the main way to establish the months is al pi cheshbon and not al pi re'iyah. What's the proof?
because we don't see sometimes.
What's the proof? Okay, good. Says Rabbeinu Chananel, the proof is in the pudding. That Klal Yisrael for 40 years in the Midbar, they could not see the Levana. They couldn't see the moon. You know why? Because they had Ananiah Kavod blocking them. So if they had 40 years of Ananiah Kavod, says Rabbeinu Chananel, so how were they Mekadesh the Levana? How did they make the calendar in the Midbar? They did it al pi cheshbon. So you see, that was the original, gentlemen, that was the original way to establish the months. In fact, Rabbeinu Chananel quotes a pasuk, I believe it's in Nehemiah, that says on the fourth line, number 7, V'ata b'rachamecha harabim lo yazavtem b'midbar es amud he'anon lo yisarmei aleim b'yoymam v'esamud ha'esh b'layla l'hem. So ask Rabbeinu Chananel, me'hechan hayu kavim chadashim al pi re'iyas halvana. How did they establish the month? By seeing the moon? Ela bevadai Iker ha-mitzvah b'kasov al pi cheshbon. When the Torah says, ha-chodesh hazeh lochem rosh chadashim, the Torah establishes the mitzvah of establishing the calendar, the main way to do it is through cheshbon and not through re'iyah. So Rabbeinu Chananel is saying, no, right, they didn't see the moon at all. That's what he says. They didn't see the moon at all, and therefore we see from there, as Rabbeinu Chananel says, Eino ela al pi cheshbon, lo al pi re'iyas halvana. So in the Midbar, Moshe Rabbeinu made a calendar. They got in the mail, they got in the mail from the Moshe Rabbeinu, and maybe they got calendars in the Midbar. Says the Gemara in Tainus, and now with this Rabbi said we can understand a very difficult Gemara at the end of Masechta Tainus. So we learned already 2 days ago daf. Now we're going to learn 3 weeks from now. This way you have a head start. The Gemara says in Masechta Tainus, and we spoke this out. If anybody wants, we have daf yomi in our shul every night after 9:15 Marav, 9:30 to 10:15 Taras Emes. So free advertisement. So the Gemara says at the end of Masechta Tainus that Lo hayu yomim tovim liYisrael ke
Yom Kippurim v'Tu B'Av.
Ke Yom Kippurim v'Tu B'Av. Says the Gemara, Bishlam Yom Kippur, I understand why it's such a happy day. Yom Slicha Mechila, Yom Sheninu B'Ay, Lucha Shniyais. But what was so great about Tu B'Av? Says the Gemara, Tu B'Av was a really great day. You know why? It's when the Meisei Midbar stopped dying. We know all Jews between 20 and 60, they passed away in the 40 years in the Midbar because of the Chet HaMeraglim. Every year, they would dig their graves, and every year, out of the 600,000, 15,000 Jews did not make it. They didn't make it. They would lie in their grave on Tisha B'Av, a Basko would come out, Hibadlu Chayim and Amesim, and many Jews, unfortunately, remained dead in their graves. The 40th year, you have only 15,000 Jews left. They stay in their graves. They wake up in the morning. They see the sun shining. They don't know, are they in Gan Eden Tachton, Gan Eden Elyon, Gan Eden, where are they? They see this is this world. What happened? Maybe the calendar was off by 1 day. Maybe, Moshe's calendar wasn't. They went the next night. maybe the calendar's still off, until they saw the full moon, when they realized it's already in mid-month, and then they realized Ribbon Shem had Rachmanas on them and Hashem spared them. That's what Tosfos brings down, Masech the Tainis, Daf Lamed Amud Beis. No, what's the kasha?
They couldn't see the moon.
We just said, according to Rabbeinu Hananel said that 40 years in the Midbar, they were Mekadosh Levana Alpi Cheshbon Lai Alpi Re'iyah. So that means they couldn't see the moon. So how'd they see the full moon? Says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. This was the 40th year, the 15th of Av. Who just passed away 15 days earlier? Moshe. Aaron HaKohen. And when Aaron HaKohen passed away, what left? The Ananei HaKavod. The Ananei HaKavod left, so they're able to see the moon. They're able to see the moon. Then, that's why they're able to see the moon, because the Ananei HaKavod left. So I'm just pointing out that this verse of Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz is arguing on Rav Pinchas Karatzer. Because Rav Pinchas Karatzer said, why? Because it came back immediately in the Schus of Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe Rabbeinu died on Shabbos. But we see from Yonasan Eibeshitz's way he learns Rabbeinu Chananel at the end of Masechta Tainis that what? That the Ananei HaKavod left did not come back, probably at least immediately, for at least probably 30 days. So if you want to reconcile these two Vertlach, you would have to say that the Ananei HaKavod left when Aaron passed away.
Well, that we do.
And it must have come back on a Shabbos. So they don't work out unless you say that is why the Yiturei Torah says that you have to say Aaron HaKohen passed away on Shabbos. But Rabbi said, I'll let you try to figure this out. But here you have two very sharp Vertlach that are very beautiful. One is Hama'achim Lotzis Min HaShabbos L'Maran Lavai, and one is how the Jews were able to see the full moon on Tezvav, but they don't work hand in hand. They don't go together. Okay. What? Oh, by the way, Tosfos Shabbos is not a Kabbalah. You have to do it. It's not a... Every Jew has to do Tosfos Shabbos.
Right, but it's easy to be with Kabbalah close to Shabbos from after the Shabbos.
Okay, yeah, right. Okay.
So what happens to the Parsha Korach? It takes care of it. It takes place in the second year.
The proper
It's at the
connotation is
inside.
separate
And
Shabbat.
Chukas goes up forward, minus 40 years up ahead. 38 years
Exactly,
actually.
it's the same thing.
Shlach, you mean, is in the second year?
No, Parshat Korach, which we read last week.
Yeah.
And then Chukas jumps up ahead 38 years.
Okay.
נכון.
Parshas Chukas is when
If
they...
you talk about the death of Aaron already, that means he's already up.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Now this is a very interesting, a mamish a goynish of art, an amazing vart. The Yushalmi says in Rosh Hashanah that by all the karbanos of all the Yom Tovim, it says the word chet. Hekraftem seir izim lechatas. By every single Yom Tov in Parshas Pinchas, it says Hekraftem seir izim lechatas, with the exception of Shavuos. By Shavuos, it doesn't say Hekraftem seir izim lechatas. It just says Hekraftem seir izim. It does not say the word chatas. Says the Yushalmi, Amar lohen HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mikivan shekibaltem aleichem al Torah. Since on Shavuos it's the day of Kabbalas HaTorah, Male ani aleichem ki'ilu lechatasam yemechem. I consider it as if you never sinned. In other words, in the zechus of Kabbalas HaTorah on Shavuos, it doesn't say the word chatos by Shavuos, because on Shavuos we don't need a chatos. Ribbono Shel Olam just forgives our sins in the zechus of Kabbalas HaTorah. There are a few questions on this. They're very nice in Parshas Pinchas. It doesn't say series and lechatas. But in Parshas Emor, it does say series and lechatas. By all the karbanos in Emor, it says series and lechatas. If you're going to tell me Shavuos is so holy, we're makabel the Torah, so we don't have to bring a chatas, so then why would it say series and lechatas in Parshas Emor? You can look it up. It's there. You'll see. Right? No, but don't rely on me. Never trust. Sam Sofer said that his godless was that every single thing he looked up. You can't trust the source. You got to look everything up yourself. But it says it there anyway. Right?
Remember that?
Right. So that's the question. The question is, in Parshas Emor it does say series of mechatas. Another question is, what is Ribbono Shel Olam saying? Because on Shavuos you're Makabel the Torah. Since when does Shavuos have anything to do with Kabbalah Torah? Shavuos Kumidai could be one of 3 days. Hey, Vav, or Zayin. Kabbalah Torah, it's Machlokes, whether it was Vav or Zayin. Many years, if they any time they were Makadesh the months, Alpi, Re'iyah, Shavuos was not Matan Torah. Shavuos is only Matan Torah today because we make the calendar Alpi Cheshvan. And the way we make it, it's always Vav. But the real way to do it, Shavuos has nothing to do with Zman Matan Torah Seinu. It's the 50th day from Yitzias Mitzrayim. It's right. It's either it could be the 5th, the 6th, or the 7th. So Rabbi Warman in a Sefer She'eres Yosef Chelek Dad, he says Mamish Ga'onos. He says like this. The Gemara Menachai says on Daf MMH, there's a very big difference between Sefer Bamidbar and Sefer Vayikra. Whatever is reported in Bamidbar are the karbanos the Jews brought in the Midbar. Whatever was reported in Taras Kayanim is L'dairais. You got it? Vayikra is for all generations. Chumash HaPikudim was Karev Bamidbar. So it comes out like a glove. In Pinchas, which is in Bamidbar, these are the karbanos the Jews brought in the Midbar. In the Midbar, they made the month what? Alpi Cheshvan. So in the Midbar, Shavuos was always Vav. It was always Man Matan Torah Seinu. And therefore, by the karbanos of Shavuos, it doesn't say Chet. Why? Because Shavuos in the Midbar was always Kabbalah SaTorah. Kabbalah SaTorah, there's no Chatas. But in Emar, which is Vayikra, these are the karbanos that are brought L'dairais. Shavuos has nothing at all to do with Matan Torah. It could be Hey, it could be Vav, it could be Zayin. Shavuos is not Matan Torah Seinu necessarily, and therefore by the karbanos of Shavuos in Emar, it does say Chatas. Mamish beautiful. You got it? In Bamidbar, these are the karbanos like the Gemara says in Menachos. In Pinchas, where it says Se'irizim Lechatas, this is the Se'irizim that was brought in the Midbar. In the Midbar, Shavuos is always Man Matan Torah Seinu. Therefore, it doesn't say Chatas. Because Shavuos in the Midbar was always Kabbalah SaTorah, it does not say the word Chatas. In the Zchus of Kabbalah SaTorah, God forgives our sins, we don't need a Chatas. But say for Vayikra, those are the karbanos brought in the... Those are the karbanos brought L'dairais. L'dairais, Shavuos is always Matan Torah Seinu. Shavuos is, not necessarily Matan Torah Seinu. And therefore it does say Chatas in Parshas Emor.
But if we're saying that you couldn't see the moon or the sun,
right? Okay, we'll see. We'll get to that. We'll see number 14. The Chazon Ish will shed light on this issue. Light. We'll shed light on this. Yeah? Okay. Parshas B'Haloischa. It talks about Pesach Sheni. Anybody know what year that was? Second year. Second year. What month of the year?
Year.
So we have, if you take a look, the first month.
They couldn't do the first Pesach.
The first month.
They were told about the Pesach.
Now, the beginning of the Sefer, Rabbi say, the beginning of Bamidbar is what month? You got it? Parshas Bala, it says Beferish. There's no machlok. It's not machlok. It's Beisham Beisol. It's a pasuk in Chumash. It says Vachodesh Harishon. Okay. Pesach Sheni is in the second month, but this story took place in the first 5. The beginning of Bamidbar is Be'echad Lachodesh Hasheni, the first day of the second month. So how does that make any sense? The beginning of Bamidbar is the second month, and the middle of Bamidbar is the first month. Does that make sense? So Tosfos and Masechta Kedushin, look at number 12.
Question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the beginning of Bamidbar begins. Vayidaber Hashem Moshe b'midbar Sinai v'yomayed b'yachad lachodesh hasheni b'shana hasheni. Yeah, the second month of the year. So the beginning of the Sefer is the second month of the year. and you get to the middle of the Sefer, it says the first month of the year. So we're going backwards.
No, and Mukhar B'Tor.
Always?
Yeah.
Okay, so Tosfos says you have to say in this case, the Ramban doesn't buy into that, but Tosfos says that in this case you have to say Ein Mukdam U'Mocher B'Torah. The question is, why? Why would the Torah put it out of order? The answer is, Tosfos says like this. The answer is, because if the Sefer Bamidbar would have started with the fact that they brought the Karban Pesach in the first month, that would have been very embarrassing for Klal Yisrael, because that was the only Karban Pesach they brought for all 40 years. So we didn't want to begin the Sefer with something which is a disgrace for Klal Yisrael, so we put it in the middle. By then, people are not necessarily know what's going on. The first pasuk they're already they're following still. But the second pasuk, it's like 11:18 in the Shir. Is everyone here? Everyone here? I hope so, right? 11:30, we know we're all together, right? But the Parshas V'Haloischa is like 11:18 and 51 seconds. So Tosfos says we don't want to start with the Karban Pesach. We don't want to draw attention. This was the only Karban Pesach Klal Yisrael brought in the Midbar for 40 years. Comes the Sefer Zera Avram, and he says, why was it that Klal Yisrael only brought one Karban Pesach throughout the 40 years? Why didn't they bring the Karban Pesach for 40 years? What happened? Says the Sefer Zera Avram, a tremendous chiddush, and the chiddush is like this. He bases it on the Mechilta. It says about the Karban Pesach, Vayikra Moshe l'chol ziknei Yisrael melamed she'asoi bezdin. Why do you need a bezdin for Karban Pesach? Because you need to be mekadesh the chodesh. What do we see from here? Karban Pesach needs kiddush levana, kiddush hachodesh al pi re'iyah. And in the midbar, they were mekadesh the chodesh al pi cheshbon. So that's why, for 40 years, the Jews could not bring Karban Pesach. Because a chelek, a component of bringing Karban Pesach is, they had to be mekadesh the month al pi re'iyah and not al pi cheshbon. So then how do they bring it that year? I don't know. That he doesn't answer. But this is his suggestion. Why, in fact, did the Jews not bring the Karban Pesach for 40 years? The answer is, like Rabbeinu Hanana says, that in the 40 years in the desert, they could not see the moon, and they had to be mekadesh the month al pi cheshbon.
They couldn't see the moon.
They couldn't see the moon. It was blocked by the cloud. Now, Rabbi Sai, we just finished learning Sefer Ezra. Tuesdays we learn Sefer Nehemiah. If anyone wants to join us in the Young Israel, in Sefer Ezra it writes that when Ezra came up to Yerushalayim, he brought the Karban Pesach. Why didn't they bring the Karban Pesach as soon as they built the second Beis HaMikdash? We know Ezra did not come up when they built the second Beis HaMikdash. He was still in Babel. Why was Ezra the first one to be makriv a Karban Pesach? You know why? Because Ezra restored Kiddush HaChodesh al pi re'iyah. So before him, they had a Beis HaMikdash. So you have Beis HaMikdash, you could bring a Karban Pesach. No, you can't. Because to bring the Karban Pesach, you need to be Mekadesh, the Chodesh, al pi re'iyah. So Avi wanted to know how they know when to daven. Shachris, Mincha, Marav. So says the Chazon Ish. You have to pay me for giving you credit, right? It says, so the Chazon Ish says like this. Chazon Ish says that, what does it mean they couldn't see the moon? They couldn't see the moon. Then it was dark 24 hours a day. It was perennially dark. How did they see the sun? How did they see the moon? So the Chazon Ish says, of course they saw the moon. But they saw it through the hazy clouds. You can't be Mekadesh, the Chodesh, through a glass or through any prism. You have to see it clearly. We're not talking about Kiddush Levana now. We're talking about Kiddush HaChodesh. Okay? Look at number 14. Chukas Rabbeinu B'chaye. Shalhay Mekadshin al pi re'iyah. Hainu she'ein me'idin al pi re'iyah derech ha'avim. They cannot testify by seeing it through a cloud, v'derech ha'shoshios, or through a prism, through a clouded prism. Okay.
What's the distinction between Kiddush HaChodesh and Kiddush Levana?
Kiddush Levana is not Kiddush HaChodesh. It has different guidelines. If you Kiddush HaChodesh is making it Rosh Chodesh. Kiddush Levana is Stam a mitzvah that is not related to. Okay.
The Kiddush HaChodesh is dependent on Kiddush Levana.
No.
If you see the Levana, mitchadeshet,
It's a different mitzvah. We don't have Kiddush HaChodesh today, but we have Kiddush Levana. We're not making it a new month.
So we're doing to the cheshbon.
Today we do Api Cheshbon,
Right.
but there's a mitzvah that when you see the Levana bechidusha, you make a bracha on it. We don't do it in the first 3 days. Kiddush HaChodesh was when the moon was born, when the Moiled HaLavana. Okay. With this, Rabbi say, perhaps we could understand a very difficult Targum Yonasan ben Uziel on Parshas Chukas. It says like this. It says about the Parah Aduma. It says, "Unasatem oisa el Elazar hakohen, b'shachad oisa lefanav." Rashi brings down the Sifri that a zar could shech the Parah Aduma, but Elazar has to watch it. What's he watching it for? Any carbon that's kosher bazar, you don't need kohanim inspecting. We could trust the Yisrael to shecht. If Yisrael could shecht, why do you need Elazar to watch? Right? That's the lashon of the pasuk. If you look in the beginning of Chukas, take a look in the beginning of Chukas. V'nasata oisa l'Elazar ha'kohen, v'shachad oisa lefanav. Remember that? And V'nasata oisa l'Elazar ha'kohen, ma'itzi al michutz. V'shachad oisa lefanav, says Rashi, zar shoichet ve'Elazar roya. What's Elazar looking at? What's he looking at? Can I do my thing without this kohen watching me? Well, you don't trust the zar? What, you need a mashgiach now? All of a sudden there's a new halacha. Shchitas paradoma needs a mashgiach? If you need a kohen, so let him shech. If you need a Yisrael, let him shech. What is Elazar? What's he looking at? It says Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. Look at number 15. V'sitnun yasa le'Elazar Sagan Kohanaya. You give it to Elazar the Kohen, the assistant Kohen. V'hanpak yasa l'chayda. He takes it out by himself. L'mibara l'mashrisa outside the camp. V'sader chazar la sidure kisin detenaya. He puts around it chips of wood of a fig tree. B'chahano icharon yikos yasa. And another Kohen slaughters it kadamai before him. Now, why you need another Kohen? Very difficult. Rashi brings down the Sifri even zar. B'srein simonai. You have to shech both simanim. Kemishar be'iran, like others. V'yivdekina b'samnei srei trefan. And he has to check all 18 trefais. Now normally when you shecht, you got to check the trefais. But there's an opinion in the Gemara that not by Parah Aduma, you're going to take out parts of the animal and check it, but you have to burn it tamima. So there's an opinion in the Gemara that by the Parah Aduma you don't check it, because otherwise it wouldn't be tamim. So the Mefarish on the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel says, well, obviously Targum Yonasan ben Uziel holds, like the opinion, that you do check it, and you don't rely on Roiv. What's the other opinion going to do with the Sifri that says the Zar shechts, and Elazar is looking, apparently he's looking to check it from a treifa. So this is very difficult. There's a brisa called a brisa de Meleches HaMishkan. Rashi sometimes quotes it in Parshas Truma. And there's an amazing brisa. Take a look at number 16. You ready? Reb Shimon ben Yosi Omer. Kol arba'im shana shal yisrael b'midbar. The 40 years we were in the desert. Lo nitzrach echa mehem. Lo orachama b'yom v'lo alavana b'layla. We didn't need any outside light sources. We didn't need moonlight. We didn't need sunlight. Ella hedim. When the clouds turned red, hayoyodim sheshak achama. You knew it was sunset. Hilbin, when the clouds turned white, hayoyodim shazar achama. They knew the sun was shining. And the anane hakavod was so bright, it was like they could see through the walls. They could see through vessels. It was like Superman. It was not, right? They could see through. They could see through. They could see through the kalim. Mistakel, X-ray vision. Mistakel b'chaviyos v'yodea masha b'soicha b'tfiach. They could look in the barrel and know what was inside. V'yodea masha b'soicha mimnei anan hashchino shebeneim shenemar ki anan Hashem al mishkan yomam ve'esh tia laila boy. V'yafla asilavoi kain. And in the future, when the Gula comes and the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to restore the ananei hakavod, we again are going to have that brilliant light. Shenemar kumi Oiri kiva oirech uchvoid Hashem. When we say the words kumi oiri, what light are we talking about? Not a sun. We're talking about the return of the Ananei HaKavod. The Ananei HaKavod is a brilliant source of light. Or like the Pasuk says, Lo yeh lo oid hashemesh al yoyma. We're not going to need the sun during the day. Ula noiga yarech lo yor lecha. So Rabbi said we see a very big chiddush in the Brayso of the Melechas HaMishkan. The Ananei HaKavod provided so much light you could actually see through vessels. By the way, Tosfos says in Masechta Shabbos, the Gemara is talking about the menorah. And the Gemara says, why they have to light the menorah? What, they needed the light in the Mishkan? But for 40 years, we went by the light of God, and they needed light in the Mishkan. So Tosfos asks, what do you mean 40 years we went by the light of God? We always will go by the light of God. Even today, when the sun comes out, it's the light of God. Says Tosfos, no. It's specifically talking about the 40 years. Why? Because look in the Brayso, the Melechas HaMishkan, that says the Ananei HaKavod provided so much light, they could see through the walls, they could see through Kalim. So that if that's the case, what do you need the menorah for? And the answer is, we didn't, to show the Shekhinah was residing in Klal Yisrael. But you see, even Tosfos quotes this Brayso, the Melechas HaMishkan, that for 40 years in the Midbar, the Ananei HaKavod provided them with incredible, brilliant light. Perek Shira, right? You ever hear of Perek Shira? It's very nice, but you still, again, you have to daven also. You have to say Shacharis. And then if you also say Shacharis, then you could say, Perek Shira says like this. Ananei Kavod Oimrim, right? You know Perek Shira, we talk about what everything in the Bria sings Shira to Hashem. What? By the way, don't say Perek Shira during Chazar Sashatz. During Chazar Sashatz, what are you allowed to do? You're allowed to look in your siddur and answer Amen. That's what you're allowed to do. No tefillos, tachnunim, bakashos, limudim. Chaim Kanievsky says even.
No phone calls.
So Chaim Kanievsky says that what if someone's maver sedra during Chazar Sashatz? It's a suffix mitzvah above avera. It's a suffix whether you have to do it again.
What's no tachnunim?
No, other tachnunim, other time, right? Anyway, that's just side point. Okay, so we say in Perek Shira like this: Ananei Kavod Oimrim. Af beri. This is what we say in Tfilas Geshem, because I believe Tosfos in Tainus on that phase says the Malach that's Memuna on rain is called Afberi. Yes. So Tosfos asks, Afberi, right? That's part of the Tfilas Geshem. But Tosfos asks, right? The Gemara says that rain is one of the three keys God maintains sole possession of. What do you mean? Afberi is the Malach HaMemuna over Geshem. That Tosfos discusses, I believe, in Tainus on that phase. But literally it means like this: Afberi, even when the sky is clear. Yatriach, God troubles. Av, the thick clouds. Yafitz, to spread. Anan oiroi, the cloud of his light. What cloud of his light? Right. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky in his commentary to Perek Shira. Right, you hear this? Chaim Kanievsky wrote a commentary to Perek Shira. He lights at number 19. What's his cloud of light? Look in the Brayso, the Melechas HaMishkan, that when the Ananei HaKavod was resting on Klal Yisrael, it was so bright, they didn't need sunlight, they didn't need moonlight, they could look through Kalim. This is the shear of Ananei HaKavod. The Ananei HaKavod provided so much light that Hashem scatters His clouds through the Ananei HaKavod that provide brilliant light. So if you look in the Sefer, Tamei HaMinhagim, he brings down from Rav Shaul of Amsterdam, who was he passed away in 1790. He was a contemporary of the Rabbi Yehuda. If you were looking at Madura Tinyana, Simon Kuf Aleph, you have a correspondence between the Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Shaul Amsterdam. And the Chida writes in the Shem HaGdolim about Rav Shaul Amsterdam, Zachisi lekabel pnei hashchina. I was zocha to receive the face of the Shechina. Shnas Tav Kuf Lamed Ches. Says the Chida midei avri b'shlichus mitzvah. I was on my way to do a mitzvah. V'zachisi lehisbasei mitarasai. I merited to gain from his aroma of Torah. Me'an v'sanusai, his aroma of humility. V'shleimusai. Says Rav Shaul. This is what the Chida writes about Rav Shaul of Amsterdam. So he brings down like this. He says, you don't have to say that the Sifri that says that. Again, the question is, what does it mean? What does Targum Yonasan ben Uziel mean? That the Kohen Gadol checked the 18 treifos? Is that like the Manda Amar, that we don't rely on Roiv, and they burnt the paraduma, not Tamim? How else did they check the treifos? Says Rav Shomei Amsterdam, if you look in the Brisa, the Meleches HaMishkan, you'll see that the Ananei HaKavod was such a tremendous light source, they were able to see through Kalim. So if they're able to see through Kalim, they could see straight through the animal, and they could check the treifos, even without taking out the internal organs. So you don't have to say that when it says, you don't have to say Tagim Yosef and Uziel is going like the Manda Omar, that they didn't rely on Roiv. Whether they did rely on Roiv, we don't know. They didn't have to rely on Roiv, right? Because they could check the animal straight. The Kohen Gadol used the X-ray vision of the Ananei HaKavod. He was able to see inside the animal. Right? So even though the Gemara brings down a Manda Amar that no, we don't check it, we rely on Roiv, this has nothing to do with it. In this case, we didn't have to take out the Ivarim. This is the meaning of Rashi, Zar, Shoichet, Elazar, Roya. What's Elazar looking at? He's looking to check through the Ananei HaKavod if the Paraduma became a treifa.
What did they do in subsequent years,
What?
When they were not Ananei HaKavod, how did they check the Paraduma?
So that's a machlokes. One Manda Amar says they relied on Roiv, and one Manda Amar says that. But we don't have a proof that according from Tagim Yosef and Uziel that they did not rely on the Roiv. By the way, says the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh, now we understand what the connection is in Parshas Emor between the Yom Tif of Sukkot. At the end of Parshas Emor, it talks about all the Yom Tovim. It ends with the Yom Tif of Sukkot, and right after that, it talks about the mitzvah of the menorah. Sukkot, menorah. What does Sukkot have to do with the menorah? Yeah. Says Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh. What do we celebrate on Sukkot? Ananei HaKavod. What did the Ananei HaKavod provide? Light. So Rebbe Shem wants you to know that when you get to the mitzvah menorah, the menorah is not for light. That you already had from the Ananei HaKavod that you just read about. So why do you have the menorah? This way you come to the right conclusion. The purpose of the menorah, it was eidos, that the Shechina is Shoira and Klal Yisrael. But the Rebbe Shem wants to make it clear that the purpose of the menorah was not for light. The purpose of the menorah was for eidos, that the Shechina is Shoira and Klal Yisrael. Says Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin, further. It's an amazing thing how many Achronim use this Brisa of the Meleches HaMishkan. So far, look, think about it. We used it for, we understand Tagim Yosef and Uziel, how they check the treifos. We understand Rashi, why Elazar has to look at it. Right? What's Elazar looking at? He's looking to check the Ananei HaKavod. We understand the hemshech between the mitzvah of Sukkot and the mitzvah of the menorah. Says Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin. Of all the malachos of Shabbos, only one of them is spelled out in Parshas Vayakel. Of all the Lamites malachos, the Torah only specifies one malacha. What is that? Lo sevaru eish. Why lo sevaru eish? Says Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin. Because you would have thought that there's no isser of lo sevaru eish in the Mishkan. You know why? Because in Machashin Tzricha Lagufa, you don't need light. If you light a candle in the Mishkan, it's pointless, it's purposeless. They have as much light as they need. You're going to hold a little candle, you already have, X-ray vision. You need a little candle. So says Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin, why does the Torah go out of its way to specify to teach you that even though in the midbar it's not shayach havara, but a time will come when you don't have Amud Anon and you don't have Amud Eish, you get to Eretz Yisrael. So therefore the Torah says, Lo Sevaru Eish, not here. When you get to Eretz Yisrael, you're going to have to know about the lav of B'chomash V'Seichem. Says the Meshech Chochmah. Unbelievable. It says in Parshas Yisroi, V'shaftu es ha'am b'chol eis. You could, right? Yisroi says you'll judge the people at all times. What do you mean at all times? Are you allowed to judge at night? No. Are you allowed to judge a court case at night? Also, the Gemara says, how are we going to explain? The Gemara struggles. How are you going to explain the pasuk? V'shaftu es ha'am b'chol eis. So the Gemara says, we see from here that even though you're not allowed to start a court case at night, if you start during the day, you could finish it at night. It says the Meshech Chochmah, that's the Gemara. But what's the meaning of the pasuk? Al pi pshat. If you remember, if you ever learn Choshen Mishpat, you remember the Sma. The Sma says, Bizman hazeh, you're allowed to judge at night because you have electricity to turn on the light. Ha! Says the Meshech Chochmah, in the Midbar, it was always light. Do the Ananei HaKavod. So therefore, Yisro tells Moshe, "V'shaftu es ha'am b'chol eis." V'shavtu asam b'choliest.
They put
Good business.
Okay. By the way, the Hafla also adds, he brings, there's a remes to this, that when the light of God, the light of God, there's no difference between day and night, right? There's a pasuk in Tehillim Kuf Lamed Gam choshech lo yachshech mimcha, kachashecha ka'ora. And then the pasuk says, Ki ata kanisa kol yosoi tesukeni mi beten imi. What's the connection between God's light and the kid in his mother's womb? Says the Hafla. The David HaMelech is bringing a proof that the light of God is not subject to day and night, because we know the kid in his mother's womb, ner dolok al roishai, v'roya misoif ha'olam v'yad. He could see straight out. He also has the X-ray vision. So just like this type of light, which is a special light, right, a supernatural light, this is not restricted by walls, not restricted by darkness, so too the light of Hashem. Okay. So everybody say, why then, with all of this information that we have about the Ananei HaKoven and its brilliant light, what does this have to do with Aaron HaKohen? Very simple. Gemara in Shabbos tells us that if a person only has enough money either for Ner Shabbos or Ner Chanukah, Ner Shabbos Adif, why? Shalom bayis. What does Shalom bayis got to do with light? So Rashi says in a number of places that there's a pasuk that the Gemara quotes later on Daf Chaf Heyam and Beis in Shabbos. Vatiznach mishalom nafshi refers to Ner Shabbos because people are betzar to sit in the dark. When you're sitting in the dark, it's really painful. So I don't know why in restaurants they turn off half the lights.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd rather eat a good piece of chicken at home where I could see the food than have to eat. Yeah, I have to pay $50 and I can't see it. The Gemara, it's bad atmosphere. It's bad atmosphere. The Gemara says a blind person is never full. Why? Because eating is more psychological than it is. If you can't see your food, you can't be full. Maybe they don't want you to see what you're eating, right? But in any event, by the way, Rashi adds, why is light? Why does light bring shalom bayis? Rashi says because when it's dark, you're going to trip over something, you're going to bang your head on the wall, and you know who you're going to blame. So it's not going to be good, right? So therefore, ner promotes shalom, and of course we know Aaron HaKohen was the preeminent, the paragon of oyev shalom v'roidev shalom. So very possibly we could suggest in the schus of Aaron HaKohen, who was the oyev shalom v'roidev shalom, he created the shalom bayis for Klal Yisrael. He was given the great matana of the Ananei HaKavod, which provided this brilliant light. Let's take it even further. Says the Vilna Gaon that in Parshas Kisisa, Ribbon Shalom tells Klal Yisrael, Hine anochi kares bris. What bris is this? Says the Vilna Gaon, this bris is the promise that God will never forsake Klal Yisrael.
What did you say, Rabbi?
God will never forsake Klal Yisrael. In Hashem says, "Neged kol amcha es and niflaos asher lo nivru b'chol haaretz v'chol hagayim." Opposite the nations of the world, I will do wonders. What wonder is this referring to? Says the Vilna Gaon. V'hu shrias ha'anon ala Mishkan. This is the cloud of glory resting on the Mishkan, the hakavod shoira aleim, and the honor that will reside on it, le'ein koil, to the eyes of everyone. V'hoylech lefneihem le'ein koil, and go before them, before everyone's eyes. Kamay shenemar, asher ayin ba'ayin nira ata va'anoncha. In Bamidbar, Yodalad, Yodalad. Very important pasuk. Familiar with this pasuk? In Bamidbar, Yodalad, Yodalad, in Parshas Shalach. It says, V'amru el Yoshev haaretz hazos, shamu. V'amru el Yoshev haaretz hazos, shamu ki ata Hashem. B'kerev ha'amazeh, asher ayin ba'ayin nira ata Hashem. That the nations of the world say to God, God, your nation could see you. How do we see Hashem? It's impossible to see Hashem. Says the Vilna Gaon, Ad shetamu kol ha'umis aleim. God allowed us to see Him to the point where the nations of the world were astounded, were so surprised that they said in Shiurim, Mizay Saylam and Hamidbar, who is this nation going up in the Midbar? Kis Simrei Sashan. What was the way that God demonstrated that He is with Klal Yisrael? through the Ananei HaKavod. If you look at the last pasuk in Parshas Pekudei, the last pasuk in Parsha in Sefer Shemais, what's the very last pasuk in Sefer Shemais? Ki anan Hashem ala Mishkan yoimam ve'esh ti alayla boy le'enei kol beis Yisrael. What does this mean? Why does Sefer Shemais conclude this way? The answer is, says the Vilna Gaon, what's Sefer Shemais ending? Oh, now Klal Yisrael has the Ananei HaKavod. We had the Ananei HaKavod from the moment we left Mitzrayim. Says the Gra, unbelievable. First of all, we only had it temporarily until the Yam Suf. Second of all, not every Jew could have seen the Ananei HaKavod at that point. When God was taking us out of Mitzrayim with the Ananei HaKavod, only the Nevi'im were able to see it, not everybody. But now, with the Hakamas HaMishkan, the Ananei HaKavod came down, le'enei kol Yisrael. Says the Gra, Vizuhi ha'pele hagadol. Of all the miracles that God ever did to the Jewish people, the greatest miracle was that God allowed every single Jew to see Him in the Ananei HaKavod. To the point where the Medrash says that when the Goyim saw that Klal Yisrael were able to see the Ananei HaKavod, they said, Ein elu ela Elohim. The Jews must be gods. And to the point where Moshe said, B'niflinu ani v'amcha. What was Moshe Mispalel? We want a Pele she'ein kamayu. The biggest Pele that Klal Yisrael ever achieved and received was the Pele of the Ananei HaKavod. And that is why it says, at the end of Shemais, le'enei kol beis Yisrael. Every Jew saw it. Says the Gra. That's why when they traveled, Moshe said, Kuma Hashem. When they stopped, Moshe said, Shuva Hashem. What do you mean Shuva? Who's he talking to? He's talking to the Ananei HaKavod. Says the Gra, V'zeh hagedula v'hatoiva asher ein acharev lo yosa kazos. This is a greatness that nobody ever achieved. That we never had anything like this. Says the Gra, and this is what we're hoping for. The Navi Yeshaya says, Ki ayin ba'ayin yiru b'shuvat Hashem Tzion. The eyes will see when God will return to Tzion. I have a very simple question for you. How will our eyes see Hashem return to Tzion? The pasuk says, Ki lo yirani ha'adam v'chai. You can't see the Rebbeinu Shalom. So what does it mean? Right? There's a song even. Ki ayin. You know the song. Ayin ba'ayin yiru. Everybody. So what does the Navi mean that our eyes are going to see Rebbeinu Shalom return to Tzion? The answer is, it refers to the return of the Ananei HaKavod. The Ananei HaKavod was the closest visualization that a human being ever had of the Rebbeinu Shalom. So Rabbi say, when we say in davening, Or Chadash Al Tzion Toyer B'nizkech Hulanu Meheira Li'ayrai. What's the Or Chadash that we ask Hashem to shine on Tzion? What light? What light? Was it a special flashlight Hashem's going to shine? Right? What is the light? The answer is, this is the light of Ki ayin ba'ayin yiru b'shuv Hashem Tzion. What light is this? This is the light of the return of the Ananei HaKavod that we're all hoping for, that just like Rebbeinu Shalom gave us this brilliant light in the Mishkan, we are yearning for. Ki ayin ba'ayin yiru b'shuv Hashem Tzion. B'rachamim her yameinu. Amen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.